Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have a pretty packed side event schedule, and so I'm going to get us started as other people arrive. There's plenty of time for that. But my name is Laura MacDonald, and I am the Managing Director of the Mortensen Center in Global Engineering and Resilience at the University of Colorado Boulder. Whoop, whoop. We have many of our students here today who will be supporting the session as note takers during the breakout discussions. And so please be kind to them. They have the thankless job of taking notes and then summarizing all of those notes in 1 minute at the end. But we're really excited to have everyone here today, and to help us get to know a little about who's in the room and why you're in the room, we'd love for you to first turn to a neighbor and introduce yourself. Turn to a neighbor you don't know, which might be tricky since everyone always sits by someone they know. Introduce yourself along these lines. Nailed it. All right, I love this energy, and I know this was not sufficient time, but I'll bring y'all back. And could we have a couple of volunteers? Perhaps don't introduce yourself, introduce the neighbor you just met, and share a little about why they're here. It will help us frame the session. So it's a test. Were you listening to the person that you were introducing yourself to? All right, Susan, do you want to introduce Whitney and why she's here?
Hi, everyone. My partner here, Whitney, shared she's here on behalf of Mortensen Veridity, and she's interested in learning more about the broader sector beyond her own individual work of approaching WASH and data in this way, and learning from all of you.
Thank you, Susan, from mWater and Solstice. Another volunteer? There was so much conversation. All right, Rita, thank you.
I wanted to introduce Emmanuel because he's from a nonprofit I haven't heard about before, Design Outreach, which does WASH in Malawi and elsewhere in Africa. And they're headquartered in Columbus, which he's headed to next. I suggested he might want to stay here, but he's going to the Midwest.
The weather here isn't that great this week, so I might choose Columbus. And then Clara, can you say what was shared in the chat from a couple people?
Yes, thank you. We have someone here, Abby Ruth from the Ugandan Water Project. We also have Mohammed Tariqul Islam from Bangladesh, and Ilya Woods, who is a student at the University of Washington. I think everyone is looking forward to seeing how we can use different perspectives on data.
Yes, thanks to those of you online for joining us today, and we'll have Clara and Kelsey providing support to our online participants. So Keith, we got some brief ideas of why people are here, but can I now bring you to the stage to set the stage?
You can have your seat back.
Thanks.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Keith Wright with the Millennium Water Alliance, and really glad to see a great turnout today. And one of the themes we heard from those brief remarks are many of us are here to learn about other sectors. How do we connect with if water, health, food security. So great to be part of this discussion today. So briefly about the Millennium Water Alliance. We're a membership alliance of 28 members from research, NGOs, and business, really focused on water security, and have been diversifying our members in recent years to bring in complementary skill sets so we can kind of learn from each other and move on. And our strategic vision is really grounded in interconnected data between integrated water resources management and water service provision and health and all those good things. And we convened this session because the climate water health nexus is not theoretical. It hasn't been, and it's certainly not now. And many of our members who have traditionally worked in very fragmented efforts are trying to find ways to connect impact and connect investments upstream and downstream, so to speak, in these different things. And data is absolutely essential to making the case for integrated approaches in investments. So why this topic and why now? The global funding landscape, if you haven't noticed, has shifted quite a bit this year, radically so. And in some ways, there are really no positives with this whole dynamic, but it's forcing many of us to think about getting out of these silos. USAID was pretty siloed in its approach. Not all donors are. So how do we connect these different points on the nexus? So old single sector methods, especially those driven by short-term grant funding, are getting fewer and fewer and frankly not as relevant or impactful. So there's a moment of opportunity. It's not easy, but there's a moment of opportunity to build coalitions and an evidence base that demonstrates the validity and the importance of connecting investments across these sectors. But integration comes with costs, right? It's not easy to connect these data sets sometimes, to connect these sectors, but it is essential, and that's part of what we'll be talking about today. So we're going to hear from some different stakeholders and ideas today. Why partnerships like this matter, both the Millennium Water Alliance and our ecosystem and all of those here and the ones you'll be hearing from today, is that cross-sectoral partnerships are essential. We kind of know that theoretically, but some of you, if you work in a multi-sectoral organization, might even talk about the divisions and how hard it is to connect within your own organization across departments. So I think we all know it's essential, but we need to make it practical and actionable. So this session reflects that same approach. We're bringing together researchers, implementers, policymakers, and students to explore what data collaboration can look like in practice. So I'll keep this really short. As you listen to today's case studies and discussions, I would encourage you to keep asking, how can we better align our data with decision making? We don't want data just sitting on shelves, but how can it drive real-time decision making? Where are the gaps that hold us back from integrated action? What data sets or sources need to be linked? There are a lot of good islands of data. How can we link those more practically? And how can coalitions like the Millennium Water Alliance and gatherings like this help close those gaps? So we're delighted you're here. Thanks for making the time, and let's make it interesting, which Laura will do now.
Thank you, Keith. And we're actually a whole minute ahead of schedule because in my enthusiasm to keep us on time, I forgot to tell y'all what we're doing today. So we've gotten through step one, welcome and introductions, and setting the stage. Thank you again, Keith. And so now we're going to dive into 5 case studies. We'll each have 5 minutes. And I just want to highlight each case study is necessarily very specific in the data and context they're discussing, but each speaker is going to work to highlight the key takeaways and opportunities for like a springboard for discussion. So as you're listening to these case studies, keep in mind that those case study presenters will then be leading 5 breakout discussions on the topic that's highlighted in their talk. And so after the case studies, we'll have time for breakout discussions, which Audrey will lead and explain in a bit. Then we'll come back together, and our graduate student note takers will work with Rachel Pellets of Aquaya to summarize the key points from the discussion and kind of take a look at the future and next steps. And then I'll be back up front to close and discuss what we're looking to do next. And this session was modeled a lot in part off of a session that was very similarly focused on data 2 years ago, and that resulted in a publication in mWater. And so we're aiming through the note takers and through our own personal notes and the discussion lead notes to generate discussion from this and publish in mWater, as well as work with Millennium Water Alliance to publish a knowledge management piece as well that will be circulated much sooner than that paper, I'm sure. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Lauren Broyles, who will be speaking to case study number 1 on data for policy and decision making. So Lauren.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm really excited to be kicking off our case studies. Like Laura mentioned, my name is Lauren Broyles. I'm a postdoctoral scholar at Penn State in the Water and Health and Nutrition Lab, working with Dr. Asher Rossinger. And today we'll be talking about different case studies looking at the water, climate, and health nexus. And so this project comes from northern Kenya, working with Dawsonage pastoralists. Here, the temperature is very, very hot, and it is very, very dry. Average temperatures can exceed 40 degrees Celsius or over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and precipitation is also seasonal. This area is very prone to droughts. Between 2020 to 2023, this area experienced a severe multi-year drought characterized by 5 failed rainy seasons. This affected the greater Horn of Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, Somalia. Millions of children admitted for severe acute malnutrition. So this area experiences a lot of climate stressors which interact with the water situation and subsequent health effects. And so here we're looking at the effects of drinking water salinity on high blood pressure and kidney function. And this is really important for a few different reasons. The first is that high blood pressure is the leading cause of death worldwide. It is estimated last year that 10.4 million people died due to high blood pressure. The second is that currently there are no standards for maximum drinking water salinity in drinking water sources. And so there are palatability guidelines between 200 to 250 milligrams per liter of sodium chloride is kind of considered unpalatable, too salty to drink, but those are just guidelines. And then the third really important thing here is that there's increasing salinization of both freshwater and groundwater resources worldwide, not just here in Kenya, but also here in North America, due to a variety of reasons. For example, salinity intrusion into groundwater, sea level rise, increased use of salts for drinking water softeners, and also road de-icing is a common cause for increased salinity in water. And so within this case study, I'll be showing an example of how we used data from this project and how it can inform policy specifically for drinking water standards. This work was published earlier this year in Hypertension. If anybody's interested, please check this out. So this slide has some more details about the project. It's been ongoing since 2019. One main takeaway I want to communicate with you is that this people group, the Dawsonage pastoralists, don't have a lot of cultural factors that make them prone to cardiovascular disease. For example, as a population, very lean, physically active, culturally not a high prevalence of smoking. And so this is just a very good case study for looking at the effects of drinking water salinity on high blood pressure. And so here with this project, we collect household surveys where we talk to people about water and food uses and water quality sampling, key measurement of biomarkers. We'll talk about blood pressure here very soon. So looking at drinking water quality, so this pastoralist group live on the shores of Lake Turkana, which is a very salty, naturally occurring lake. And so people don't drink water from the lake exactly, but the water, due to the local geology, the water in the groundwater sources that people do use is very salty. So hand-dug wells, standpipes, there's a desalinated water source, but even that has a high salinity. And so overall, we see that drinking water salinity here is seasonal. And so you can imagine that during times of drought, that salinity would increase even more. And So with this study site, measuring blood pressure with our participants, this picture on the bottom is showing with the arm cuffs the measurement of blood pressure for our participants. And so we see that both of these figures are showing probability of hypertension stage 1 and stage 2. The red line is the probability of hypertension for men. The blue line is probability of hypertension for women. And we see consistently that increased salinity of drinking water predicts a higher probability of both hypertension stage 1 and stage 2 here. And so takeaways from this, our project is showing this data that can be used to inform drinking water standards for maximum salinity in drinking water. And implementation of these standards would incentivize increased monitoring, measurement of health risk, health exposure, and then that'll put us on the pathway to intervention and solution. So that's my case study. I'll be leading the research data policy group. And so then these are just some questions that we could think about related to bringing these sectors together to address climate, water, and health issues. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Yes, and so looks to be a very in-depth discussion with Lauren on WASH data to inform policy and decision making. So thanks for laying out these questions. Next up, we have Stivers Kathuni from Millennium Water Alliance. Oh, he's moved. Who will be speaking to applying data to move from theory to implementation itself. So Stivers, here you go.
Yeah, so thank you, Laura, for the introduction. And as you've heard, we will be presenting many case studies, but more so, I come from the Millennium Water Alliance. My name is Stivers. I work with Millennium Water Alliance based in Kenya as a country director, but also as a PhD student. I'm also a PhD student at the University of Colorado, Boulder. Now to this bulk of my presentation is about the implementation pieces, taking the theories and all the research work down to implementation. And one of the things that we've been doing as a Millennium Water Alliance, working with our alliance partners in Kenya, we have about 12 now, whom we work with very actively and more so to bring research work to take that into action in the communities. One of the things we've been doing is taking a lot of data, analyzing that data, and then using it to make decisions, to design our programs, but also to make changes in these communities. So one of the things I'm talking about today is the challenges and lessons from this community, from what we are seeing from the field, but also how we are taking that data and implementing it directly with the community. This is a very complex graphics here of what we go through, and this might be familiar to some of you who are into implementation. This is work we did about 4 or 5 years ago, where we were trying to track how money flows from when the government allocates money to repair of boreholes. More specifically for this illustration is to show you the green, if you can follow the green arrows there, that shows how repair funds are allocated. Money coming in from the national government has many things that they need to do with, especially in the water sector. Part of the money is being used to repair, other parts of the money is being used to build new systems, other parts parts of the money is being used to sustain some of the pieces of functionality. But functionality of boreholes is takes many things to keep a borehole functional. One of the things on that corner there, where you have a photo there, is that you see functionality is about repairing the system. It also talks about other inputs that really make sure that you're keeping a system running. Now, why we show this is to show how complex it can be, especially if you don't have adequate data to support the need for allocation of money, for allocation of budgets, especially from the government. And really to just show how also the government makes decisions. At times you're talking about spare parts, you're also talking about the vehicles that are used to go out there to fix the boreholes, but also you're talking about contractors who are being paid, the technicians who are being paid to fix these boreholes. What we did as Millennium Water Alliance We installed sensors working closely with Viridi. Viridi is a tech company also based in the University of Colorado Boulder. Out of that, we installed, out of the many systems in the northern parts of Kenya, we installed 250 or so sensors and collected lots of data. Part of that, and you can see the representation there of the many dots there. There's about 250 sensors out there. But of late, we've narrowed down to about 60 of these, and we're collecting daily data of how the function, how each of these water systems is functioning. More so, we also do collect data on amount of water people are taking. That's in terms of quantity. But also, we've started collecting data on water quality. As you can see on that end, we have a photo of one of the inline chlorination systems that is working. But through working with the communities, we are collecting data on the quality of water, the free residual chlorine at each of these water points. And all this is data coming in on a daily basis. For some of those sites, we've collected data for the last 10 years. So you can imagine the amounts of water, daily data that we have for each of these water points, data that also the government doesn't have in the context of Kenya. Now, what do we do with the data? We get the data, it comes in our dashboards. Every morning, every day, we are getting all this data. But what we've done is try to put together the data, but also overlay it with other types of data that we get. Also, for example, season, rainfall data. And then see how boreholes are functioning. The map there shows all the sensors again, but the line graphs there representing how the systems are working, but also overlaying that with rainfall data. And that shows you how, as boreholes are functioning, you also get into looking at when communities are using the water most is when there is less rainfall. So these water systems become very important, especially during the drought season for these communities to use. But also, we try to do a bit of data analytics and try to look at how that reflects in terms of functionality, but also how quickly these boreholes are fixed whenever they fail. So the bar graphs there on that corner are really showing you some of the work that we're doing in terms of establishing regional uptime. There are systems, there are places where boreholes are functioning better, the uptime is better, but also there's places or regions, in this case we are talking about counties. There are counties that systems are working at not very good, they don't have very good uptime. But also some of the graphs there, I think that should be the green graph, is showing about mean time to, I can't see it from here, but basically there's mean time to repair. First of all, how long is it taking the technicians and the county government to fix a borehole when it fails? So how quickly is a borehole fixed? We also get data around mean time to failure. Once I fix a system today, how long will it take for the system again to fail? So all this is data that is really important to make sure that we are responding to, we're using data to make decisions around the spare parts we're installing. If the borehole is being fixed today and fails again in 10 days, it means we're maybe putting in substandard parts, but also maybe the technicians we're using are not technicians that really understand what they're doing. Maybe they need some retraining. So all this is how we use our data. But also we also make inferences around the functionality, if you see the scatter, the one on the corner there with the many green and orange dots, basically is a borehole that is functioning, but also functioning and has a lot of seasonality issues. So pumping happening 24 hours, at times it goes down. Every orange dot that you see there reflects a system that is not functioning. So they are over pumping. So it goes back to water resource management, where we're coming back to tell them, please, this is how you should be, this is how you're killing your borehole, this is how you're over pumping and killing your system. Finally, using this data, we have used the data to help us to design a program that we call Drip Fundi. And if you join my team, I'll speak largely to what Drip Fundi is all about. But basically, it's a whole mechanism of using this data to also translate to carbon revenue. So carbon financing, how the data then we take that and can generate carbon financing from that. And Drip Fundi is an interesting program that we are trying to expand, but more so use data to prove that reliability of boreholes is equally as important as the access that we establish. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stivers. And so yes, join Stivers for data to apply the transition from theory to implementation. And I think as Stivers highlights, Drip Fundi is an excellent opportunity and launching off point to think about how you can collect data to inform day-to-day implementation and not just data collection for monitoring or reporting to your funders. So join Stivers for that conversation. Next up, we have Dennis Muthike from the Mortensen Center at CU Boulder, who will be talking about methods for data localization. All right, Dennis.
Thank you very much. And talking about data, we have many opportunities these days to collect data from households, talk to people, but also we have remote sensing observations coming from a lot of satellites that are orbiting the Earth. And the question is, how can we combine these, how can we integrate these different sources of data to inform local adaptation interventions? I'm Dennis. I'm with the Mortensen Center. I'm an assistant research professor and also currently serving as the interim director. So, water insecurity continues to shape global climate adaptation outcomes and conversations. Presently, about 2 billion people lack access to safe water supplies. When you account for water quality, that doubles up to about 4.5 billion. And this topic is of utmost importance, especially for communities like where I come from in Kenya, where our systems are still very dependent on rain-fed, basically on rain. And so any sensitivities and any changes in rainfall has sensitivities in the systems, and those can manifest into people's experiences about water availability, water safety, water access, etc. And the way that we have done local assessments primarily has been dependent on these localized, assessments of, household surveys, for instance, or in other cases where we are running water allocation planning models, we are utilizing remote sensing data as inputs to drive those models. And often that is representative of the physical water risks, but it misses a critical factor that shapes people's experiences with water security, which is how people represent, for instance, their perceptions of water availability during a dry season, and also whether that water is safe or not. And so for us to be able then to take advantage of these remote sensing driven models, we have to also think about what data opportunities are coming from these localized interventions. So what we've seen is for many global models nowadays, especially with AI, foundation models or the embeddings from satellite Earth observations, is that we are now able to have a repository of big data coming from these satellite observations, and we're able to develop models, global models, regional models that can tell us about things like river flows, at any point in time, how much water is passing through, say, a river reach that feeds a livestock population or a human population. And so we're doing a very good job at doing that, and we're doing a very good job at representing these flows, environmental flows. And now currently what we've seen is with expanding local assessment, like for instance, this household water insecurity experiences and their counterparts, the food insecurity experiences as well. More and more countries are adopting, organizations and countries are adopting these tools as ways to understand how people's experiences are shaped by environmental variability. And so we see an opportunity here where we can use those representations of people's perceptions about water security, combine them with remote sensing imagery or models or remote sensing driven models to both validate these RS-based models, but also be able to account for the social impact of water insecurity that are not necessarily accounted in these RS-driven global and regional models. So this is what we are trying now to do. We have data coming from Rwanda for a large-scale impact evaluation where we surveyed about 15,000 households, for 4 years. So this is about 60,000 data points, and we also have similar assessment in Kenya and elsewhere. And through the HYS tools, we have had many other organizations doing this across about more than 25 countries, if I have the number correct. And we are starting to ask ourselves, how can we take advantage of this? This is more a conversation that I want to start today here. And some of you may have already have had experience with the HYS tools, and we welcome your participation to try and unravel these opportunities, especially now with AI expanding our ability to both localize but also adapt some of these global regional models for local utilities. And so this is the conversation. These are the two questions that will drive our conversation, and we're very happy to take this forward and make sure that we take advantage of the many opportunities to synergize efforts across physical science and social science. Thank you so much.
I feel like every speaker is having to catch their breath as soon as they sit down. So apologies that these are very much whirlwind presentations, but hopefully they're at least giving you a flavor for what you'll get to talk to them about in their breakouts. So with Dennis, if you're interested in thinking about how you can combine data sets from remote sensing to more locally collected data with an emphasis perhaps on the WISE scales, but other scales as well, you can join Dennis during the breakout discussion. All right, so next lightning round is Susan Lamb from mWater, who will be speaking to connecting sectors through shared data. All right, Susan.
Hi, everyone. As Laura mentioned, my name is Susan Lamb. I work with mWater and Solstice, and I'm here with our co-founder, Dr. John Fieri, as well. And today we'll talk about how we can, with shared data, connect sectors and break down sector silos. So first to start, just to introduce mWater and Solstice, we are a free platform for data collection and management. And often a way we like to explain it as we're a platform where you can collect data like you might in Google Forms, you can visualize data like you might with Power BI, you can manage water systems like you might with EpiNet, you can manage spatial data like you might with QGIS or ArcGIS. You can manage accounting data like you might in QuickBooks, but all in one platform and all free. And because we're open access, it's really allowed us to have a global user base. So we have nearly 350,000 users across the globe. And importantly, all data within the platform belong and is managed by the user. So this being a WASH conference, I know many of us might be familiar with mWater. It's where the platform began nearly 13 years ago and was developed for the WASH sector specifically. Now, over time, especially in recent years, we heard from many of our users that they were interested in using the platform, but for data from other sectors outside of WASH, so health, education, agriculture. So in response, we created a sister platform called Solstice. And Solstice is sector agnostic, and the important thing to know is it's the same underlying platform as mWater. It's the same engine under the hood, so to speak, but not tailored to any one sector. But if you have an mWater login, for example, you can use that same login to log into Solstice and manage your data from mWater in that platform and vice versa. But with Solstice being sector agnostic, it's really allowed us to engage in some recent work in Angola alongside UNICEF Angola. And our work there is to develop a national MIS, or Management Information System, on the national level for WASH, climate, disaster risk reduction, and emergencies. So as you can see, very cross-sectoral sort of MIS. And really kind of the focus or importance of this is it allows for an investment by improved governance approach, which really in essence is it's a cycle where data can be used to show good governance in a area or process or government to then invest and attract future funding. So today I'll talk a little bit more about how what shared cross-sector data can enable. There's many reasons, but we'll talk about 3 today, especially related to our work in Angola. So one is it allows for prioritized ongoing decision-making, and in this case with government budgeting. So as some context to this example, Angola recently redrew their district administrative boundaries within the country, and so municipal leaders are now learning their new area of governance. So what they've been doing is using the Solstice platform to map the infrastructure within their new municipalities to learn what's in that new municipality and then to budget for that. And so it's not just for WASH infrastructure, but infrastructure across many sectors like schools, healthcare facilities, transportation. And so because they can see all of that information in one place, they can best prioritize the needs and pose their budgets when they do to the higher levels of government. Another example is coordinated cluster response, especially in emergencies like cholera. So unfortunately in Angola, there was a recent spike in cases earlier this year, but also the cases are rising again now. We were able to develop an MIS on Solstice that can be used by the National Water Directorate and government health officials, both from 2 very much different ministries, to share data and kind of track response with this kind of shared epidemiological data. And the last example is it allows for kind of sustainable evidence-based planning, especially in relation to climate resiliency. So this is some upcoming work we're really looking forward to. One is using the UNICEF Global Hazards Database and integrating it into our platform for Solstice. So this database is created by UNICEF and will be launched, we anticipate, by the end of this calendar year. We hope to integrate it into our platform so our users can see this global hazards database with information such as flooding risk or extreme heat, and use it alongside their data within the platform. Another upcoming thing that we're looking forward to related to this is Solstice is planning to develop drought and flood monitoring tools within our own platform. And this will allow users to monitor in close to real time with their own data that they have in the platform in light of these kind of climate resiliency focus. So if you're interested in shared data or open access platforms, please come talk with us. We'd love to discuss more.
Thank you very much, Susan. So yes, again, for cross-sectoral data sharing, an opportunity to discuss with Susan, and perhaps John will be joining that group as well. Are you trying to hop around? I'll let you choose. All right, so up next we have the fifth case study, which is by Simone of Helvetas, and this is a pre-recorded video. So we'll have Simone's video play, and in the room with us is Christina Barstow from Helvetas, and so she'll be leading the discussion group on data for transparency and accountability. But first, we'll play Simone.
Data for transparency and accountability. Lessons from the mWater case to inspire wash digitalization. Hello, I'm Simone Robsijn and want to share some lessons and inspirations with you today. Imagine a rural community where the status of every water point, its quality, functionality, maintenance can be updated by a local operator using just a simple mobile app and instantly shared with municipalities, ministries and donors. Or imagine families being able to pay their water tariffs or receive targeted subsidies through secure digital payments linked to their identity. These examples are not science fiction. Pieces of this future are already emerging in different countries. I am not a wash specialist, but I've worked on how digital interoperability can transform complex sectors, in my case agriculture, and I see very clear parallels with the challenges and opportunities you face in water and sanitation. I coordinated the mWater project financed by GIZ Aquaya, where we built an interoperable traceability ecosystem for smallholder communities markets, the deforestation verification, georeferencing. And with those building blocks, without starting from scratch, lot of use cases can be developed. You see on top of it all are the different use cases, and there, what we do is recycle available information from mentioned building blocks. In the Mikakao case, we worked on traceability, carbon payments, microloans, and access to agricultural inputs, which recycles these exactly building blocks I mentioned before. This figure and this logic you can find in a recently published article, Digital Public Infrastructure in Agriculture, and I really recommend reading it. It's really inspiring. Okay, so let's imagine what this could look like in WASH. Because the beauty of DPI is that you can reuse and adapt existing components, and this is just the beginning of this digital transformation. There's enormous room for local innovation. We've seen in agriculture that when the foundations are shared, local actors can build diverse, powerful solutions. So I want to invite you to reflect, what WASH use cases could you enable with shared digital infrastructure? And how could interoperability support your work, your communities, your partners? Digitalization of WASH is still in its cradle, and this is exactly the moment when your ideas, your contacts, and your leadership can shape how it evolves. Enjoy it.
All right. So that concludes our case studies, and we're going to move into breakout discussions. So I'm going to ask all of our breakout leaders to move into separate parts of the room. How this is going to work is we're going to have about 30 minutes. Each group, 5 groups in total, will have one case study that they'll cover, and these will be facilitated by your breakout discussion leaders. We will rotate halfway through though, so if you're interested in more than one topic, which I know I want to go to all 5, you have the opportunity to rotate and engage in multiple discussions. For all of our virtual attendees, we will have Clara, who will be engaging with you all in the chat, and she's going to do a great job. All right, so for our breakout discussions, if you're interested in data for policy and decision making, you go to Lauren. Lauren, if you can raise your hand. Thank you. If you're interested in theory to implementation, you'll go to Stivers. Stivers, raise your hand again so everyone can see you. Great. Yeah. For methods for data localization, you'll want to meet with Dennis. Thank you, Dennis. And then for connecting sectors through shared data, you'll want to meet with Susan. For data for transparency and accountability, you'll want to meet with Christina.
Let's go back there, back corner.
I like it. She's claimed a corner. And then again, Clara will be covering our virtual audience. So you're free to discuss whatever comes to mind and whatever you would like in your breakout groups, but I encourage you to use the last 5 minutes to answer one of the following questions you'll have on the screen here. And with that, I leave you to go into your breakout groups.
Specify which corner
Yeah, they were y'all were supposed to be
Lauren is here.
Dennis is over here.
Cyrus, if you want to take over that corner. Yeah, I'm right here. All right, Stivers group is going to be over here.
any specific? There's no way I can jump into over there like into my group, right? It's okay, it's not. I don't know. Yeah, she's on. That makes a difference. Like I
You have 3 minutes left in this round. Start looking at these questions, thinking about which one you might want to answer. I'm sorry to break up all the wonderful discussions that everyone's having, but if I can have your attention. Can I have your attention, please? We're going to rotate now. So if you are interested in moving to another topic, I highly encourage that. As a reminder, we have 5 wonderful groups. I also encourage you to move topics. All right. Don't forget, Christina with Helvetas is in the back, and she's got some wonderful things to say. So I encourage you to join that group. Dominic. All right, you have 3 minutes left. Start wrapping up your discussions and answering some of the questions on the slide.
Hey, a round of applause. All right, everyone, we'll come back together, and I'll hand it over to Rachel.
Hi, everyone. Sorry to break up the exciting discussions. I think what we're going to do is just have people stay where you are just to save time rather than shift around. And I am going to ask each group to report back. So let's, with the graduate students. So let's start here with group 1 and Whitney. Thank you. Yeah, stand up, please. Thanks.
Okay, hello everyone. So I was with the group kind of focusing on using data to translate into policy. And one of the primary things we focused on discussing is the idea of balancing what's feasible and applicable in policies both locally, nationally, and globally, as well as what makes sense in practice. So how data can inform actions that are meaningful and actionable at all kinds of levels, as well as understanding that these are not mutually exclusive. Something can be established at a high level and applicable potentially in a different way or more specific to a single context. And then also balancing and identifying what are the priorities that are of interest to the group with which you are engaging, whether that be policymakers, local stakeholders, or research groups. And then truly making data actionable from once you establish a result from a study or collaboration, that most of the time if you're working with a policymaker, their focus is on, so then what can we do? So having ideas of how to translate data into action that are localized and specific, but also can be applicable at high levels. And I think that's everything. Is that a good amount of time?
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Whitney. Yeah, over to Katie, group 2.
Hello, everyone. I'm Katie. I was with Stiver's group, which was talking about theory to implementation. And what both sections of our group talked about a lot were kind of more in depth of what has their data produced, what results have come from it. So one big thing that both groups had talked about was how Millennium Water Alliance has begun to monetize the data into carbon financing. They're getting a lot of feedback with borehole repair and maintenance. And so a lot of the data is also going into preventative maintenance, and they're analyzing what aspects of boreholes are continuously failing, et cetera, and using that to then preventatively maintenance. And also what other people had talked about, we kind of didn't answer the questions, we just kind of talked more about the data. So what other people talked about, and Stivers kind of expanded upon, was how currently a lot of the boreholes are only at 40% functionality, so they're using a lot of this data to reduce the lag time between the breakage and then the maintenance, and also moving up to 92% functionality. So we kind of just talked more about what results he's getting from getting all the data.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah. Practical application of using data for preventative maintenance. Over to group 3. So we have Dennis's group and we have Zachary. Thanks.
Hey everyone, my name's Zach, like she said. Our group was talking about combining data from the HWISE platform, household surveys, with geospatial data to get more information. And there was a lot of excitement in the group about the potential for doing this and the things that it could tell us. Looking at just kind of the question of when rainfall is below normal levels, how does that actually impact people and what does that actually look like for people? There was a lot of understanding that neither one of those pieces of the puzzle kind of gives us everything that we need. And there was interest in understanding how those are correlated, but also understanding kind of the range of the data and how they could give us better insight into what actually what are the different factors contributing to water security or insecurity depending on both of those factors. And so there was a lot of conversation about and brainstorming about strategies to actually put that into practice. And so we talked a lot about layering those data sets over each other to be able to identify those things. And so just categorizing the overall feelings was like the excitement, and then there was even commitments of finding someone who could do that geospatial coding to be able to layer those things over top of each other so we could be able to dive deeper into this.
Awesome. Thanks, Zachary. I think there's just more and more publicly available data. There's more and more we can do. So really exciting to see how we can think about it with water security too. So over to group 4. So this is Susan Lamb, and Joshua is going to summarize. Thanks.
Hi everyone, my name's Josh, and yeah, we were talking about the mWater platform and the use of bringing together cross-sectoral data into one dashboard where it's easier to view. So we generally talked about the different sectors of data that people interact with in all their different projects, and there was great consensus that there's absolutely no such thing as siloed work. Everybody's project involved all kinds of different data, so whether you're looking at water quality or environmental impacts or the financial burden or the economics behind the project, everybody had a multitude of different factors that played in. And of course, each of these has their own different types of data. We talked about challenges in integrating all of this into one dashboard and the issues that people had faced in their real life experiences. Something that came up pretty frequently was the use of specific jargon or data interpretation from different fields. So it's difficult to know the specifics and the details and the functionality of, say, economics when you're a water scientist. So the ability to have a centralized dashboard where everything is translated into the same language, so to speak, would make things a lot simpler and allow for better communication between sectors. We also talked about kind of the future implications of data security, because in any kind of platform like this, you're bringing together not only large scales of data, but also potentially sensitive data like healthcare or financial information. And yeah, people share concerns about keeping this stuff sensitive versus having access to it, and how that will play out in the future. Thank you.
Great, thanks Josh. I love how there's no such thing as siloed work. That's a great thing for us to think about. And now over to Christina's group, and Chris will give us a summary.
Yep.
Thanks.
We talked about data for transparency and accountability. We talked about really the user from like all the way up top to all the way at the bottom, the farmer in this case study. So really being able to use the platform and integrate multiple things within that one platform, like Josh's group was saying, but also using that day to day. Some of the challenges that were brought up were just connectivity for potential rural areas, also just literacy. Does everybody have a smartphone to use that app, and training on that front? But really, at the end of the day, we also talked about a lot of the trust and the protection of data and the accountability and who you're getting that data to. Is it going to be used for the government, or is it going to the community, and how is the community accessing that platform?
Great, thanks Chris. Great to talk through the practical applications of data up and down the chain. And we did have a virtual group too. I don't know if Kelsey, Clara wants to do a quick summary. Thanks.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Kelsey. Like I said, we had a couple comments online, a few talking about partnering across sectors and connecting different sectors over shared goals, specifically wanting to include private entities more to help them to kind of see their data outside of the silos it's in, and see the importance of data sharing. And then also just some excitement over seeing the different technology used to make data more accessible and actionable, and using that technology to also get the data out of silos. So, yeah.
Like Kelsey said, we talked about how private entities might own data and are less generous towards us than our friends like at mWater might be. Especially as we start branching out into other sectors like agriculture, where big corporations have a ton of water-related data but might not be either incentivized or interested in sharing it. And we talked about maybe how do we get those partnerships started, and whether it might start with like an invite to something like this where they could see the connections.
Great. Thanks. Well, thanks everyone. I just wanted to say thank you, and it's great to hear some of these themes across the different groups too, about how could data be actionable, how can we use it for local decision making, but also at the high level, while still thinking about things like security, ethics, and things that apply across different groups. So with that, I'll hand over to Laura for a final conclusion. Okay, thanks.
Let's give a round of applause for Rachel and the grad students. Okay, so it is 2:56, so we're really nailing this. Thank you all for sticking around, going through 2 rounds of discussion. It was really rewarding to see how many people valued the time and input of others, and I think that's really why I value this conference and come back every year, is these conversations. But I also know that during side events, when we break out for discussions, a lot of people leave, so thank you for not leaving. With respect to next steps, if you fill out this survey, you can get access to the email addresses that I just breezed through that you can also find on the internet. But also, we've collected from the case study presenters essentially a digital toolkit of resources that highlight the work that they presented on. And then we'll be working to develop a learning brief that captures the key discussion points, as well as, of course, moving towards that PLOS Water publication. But nearer term, if you would like to get those resources, and then medium term learning brief, please fill out this survey. Audrey, is there anything I'm forgetting? I think the last thing is we were blessed by Stivers to lead a case study and discussion group, but he will also be a plenary speaker on Thursday, and I can't stop teasing him about that. So please join the plenary on Thursday to learn more from Stivers. And then also, for those of you who were interested in talking about the WISE scales, I will do a brief pitch for another Thursday side event where we're thinking about the impact of water security on children, and we'll have the opportunity to think about the institutional WISE scale that's being developed. And so with that, think about those and the many other amazing sessions, and enjoy the break, and we'll see y'all at happy hour.
Will you bring this chair up?
Student note takers, if you have physical notes, can you bring them up? If you have digital notes, can you email them?